So, hello to everyone who is watching this video. So, I'm making this video with a particular idea in mind, and that idea is about India, uh, the 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 democracy known as India, or officially, which is known as the Republic of India. Now, there are several things that we can talk about it, but I think one of the things which is very pertinent and very important to talk about at this juncture, at this era, at this time, is the certain lack of democracy that we can see, overwhelming, degradation of democracy that we can observe uh, in our economy, in the function, the way it functions, the way India has been functioning. Uh, Many a times people have, been very proud about this idea, about this fact that India is one of the largest democracies in the world, and of course it is. I mean, given the sheer population that India houses and the uh, diverse regional uh, ethnicities and cultures and religions that it harbors, it truly is a wonderful thing, and it's a wonderful platform for diversity. And this whole idea of unity and diversity has been something that we have all, as Indian citizens, we have all sort of encountered, we have read about in our textbooks, in our as a part of our curriculum. But unfortunately, we can see that there's been steady decline in this embracing and this harmony that we all sort of took pride on when we read about it in our textbooks. And I don't really blame any particular party for it, because I think that this degradation or this decline is not very new, actually. We can if we look back 50 years or 100 years even, you know, it has always probably been there, right? It's always been there. So to say that, oh, it only is happening now, it would be a bit short-sighted, because we're not taking into account the fact that it has always been so. It has always been a cause of concern, but in different ways, I would say. Like, for example, back in the 80s, or even before that, I think the major concern was that there was a regional ignorance. You know, the the then government. I don't want to take names particularly, but the then governments, they had a secular bent of mind, but they did really, sort of never took into account the sheer diversity that India houses and the different ethnic groups that it housed. And because of this, it led to very extremist forces coming into play. Because, see, because people were, pushed to a certain edge, in several different regions of India. So that bolstered so many ethnic strifes, and so much of extremist tensions. And that was really the defining, definitive aspect of when we talk about 80s and 90s of India. It really, of course, I mean, as a nation, there were many advances and many successes that it achieved, but there are several fundamental issues that it still sort of hasn't been able to solve so far. And then we also, and now we see that it's just growing. It's just the degradation, the aspects of a flawed democracy, and then sliding into a authoritarian regime is just only growing, and it's very unfortunate. If someone asks me, okay, so throw us a solution. Tell us what is a very proper solution for it. Well, uh, I maybe see what I may suggest may not work out, but if I do have to suggest, if I do have to, tell people, oh, this is the way, then I would say that first of all, first of all, I mean, the first thing foremost is that we cannot change it overnight. Probably, we might in our lifetimes we might see India sliding to a very serious form of dictatorship, probably, and it could be a very saddening thing for a lot of people. But what I would say is that whatever we can, we must try to like make people aware of the consequences of not participating in the democratic system. I think first of all we need to make people aware of what's going on. We need to make people aware of what it means to be an Indian. I think, unfortunately, even after all these 70 years or 80 years of our existence as a singular nation, as a singular entity, a political entity, I think what hasn't come into play is, see, the problem that I think, in the mistake I would say that Indians do and Indian politicians do, and deliberately or otherwise, is that they always because see, India cannot be defined uh, you know in terms of nationally how other nations would define them, right? For example, I mean, if you look at France, it's not that big of a territory. So if they go on to say, oh, France and the French language are supreme, it kind of works. Of course, even in those regions, like for example, even in the UK, if English is too much emphasized, of course, there would be the Scottish people or the Welsh people or the Irish people who would be really irked by that certain idea. But even then, regardless of that, it kind of works. It kind of, because it's not that big of a region. It's still, but of course, it's still, yeah, unjust. But for India, it's like you're housing more than 1 billion people, and when so you cannot, India cannot be a Hindi only state, or India cannot be a Hindu only state, or India. I mean, see, it is in the ethos. Okay, I mean, if we talk about uh, Hindi hegemony, or let's say if we say it, whether we call it Hindi, sort of the prevalence of Hindi culture, right, or Hindi centric media, that is there for sure. That is always there, and it's quite prevalent, and there's no denying of that as a fact. But uh, but to say that that is supreme, or that reigns supreme, or that's above others, is sheer ignorance in the part of whoever wants to think like that. The same thing goes with religion, of course. I mean, Hinduism. I mean, if like I am a non-believer, I don't have any belief systems, but despite of that, I would say that culturally speaking, Hinduism is very prevalent in India, and I have no qualms with that. I very happily have participated in almost so many of the different, you know, so many of the different, whatever you call it, like customs or traditions or religions. Um, so I think it becomes really tricky, I would say. But regardless of that, what I want to say is that officially, the word always has to be that we are a diverse nation, and we are. I mean, the Indian nationalism is a territorial form of nationalism. That is something that we should not forget. Unfortunately, many of us are sort of ignoring this fact. That, oh, it's just, I mean, okay, Hindi is a majoritarian language, fine, we'll work with that. Hinduism is a majority religion, we'll fine, we'll work with that. But that idea, tarnishes India. That idea divides India. Okay, see, the issue is not with Hindi, because people celebrate, like, let's say for example, Hindi cinema, right? It's celebrated, it is watched, it is liked, it is even like it's hated as well, probably because of the cringe sometimes that many of the content holds. But regardless of it, yeah, I mean, and that's fine. Like, if you look at me, I mean, I do say that that it's concerning that people of Arunachal Pradesh are losing their languages, probably. They are continuously speaking in Hindi, maybe, as Hindi has become a lingua franca. But again, The fact that Hindi is becoming a lingua franca, or they have their own version of Hindi, is something that I cannot deny. That I cannot, uh, not I cannot stop from happening, right? And as a linguist, I just have to be neutral, observant of what's going on. So that is fine. So cultural, but the problem arises when you impose something. When there are people who do want to stay different. There are people who want to integrate but not assimilate, right? So you have to understand these people. You have to understand their ethos, whether religiously, or whether it is linguistically, or whether it's ethnographically, or whichever way there is. So I think the key thing here is to understand this diversity, is to acknowledge this diversity, to respect this diversity. Unfortunately, we cannot. India is not the United States. India is not the United States, that, oh, we had these white founding fathers, and manifest destiny and all these sort of ideas. I mean, that's not India, I would say. Again, similarly, I would say that India is not about this one particular language. India is not about it's not France, where French reigns supreme. It's not, let's say, Japanese. It's not Japan, or it's not Korea, or it's not China. I mean, even if we look at China, there's so much of diversity, and the Chinese are making it worse by committing the atrocities that they are committing when it comes to the Uyghur Muslims, or the Tibetans, or so on. So the Indians also have to be careful about the injustices that have meted out. I mean, look at the way the whole Ladakh issue, the most recent one of the all the issues. I mean, look at the way that it has been dealt with. Look at the way the CA issue has been dealt with. The Assamese had been fighting for it for so long. The Assamese have been rallying against it, but there was no sort of initiative that was taken at all. So it's so concerning that India neglects its minorities, and I mean, of course, the Muslims. I mean, with the CAA, even the Muslims have been, uh, you know, they have been mistreated, I would say. So these things, will cause some will have detrimental effects. I mean, there might be people who would say, oh, just they would come at me and be like, oh, you're just speaking nonsense, and oh, it's fine. I mean, Hindi, this is fine. We need a homogenous identity. We need a national identity. Someone might come to me and be like that. But what I say is that you cannot, unless the minorities, whether linguistic or ethnic or religious, if they have, unless they have a collective amnesia, they will always, want would want to follow their culture, their customs, their traditions. You cannot just simply, uh, you know, come ahead and be like, oh, you cannot be like this, or you cannot, believe your religion. So we need to be careful about that. We need to realize that that Indian nationalism is a territorial form of nationalism, and you cannot change it. You cannot make it to be otherwise.